December 27th, 2008, Israel launched a massive military offensive against the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. The Strip had been placed under an Israeli-led siege a year earlier, subjecting the 360-square-kilometer enclave to a land, air, and sea blockade. Codenamed Operation Cast Lead, this offensive began at 11 a.m. on a Saturday morning, with Israeli air jets firing on targets across the territory. Niet reported at the time that 80 jets, warplanes, and helicopters dropped over 100 bombs on dozens of targets during the initial strike. Among the targets were the small fishing port and the main police compound in Gaza City. Throughout the first week of the assault, Israel relied on aerial attacks to pound Gaza. A report by the Palestinian Center for Human Rights for the week 24th-31st of December 2008, cited in the United Nations fact-finding mission on the Gaza conflict, sometimes known as the Goldstone Report, found that Israel launched at least 300 air and sea strikes against the Gaza Strip. These strikes targeted 37 houses, 67 security and training sites, 20 workshops, 25 public and private institutions, 7 mosques, and 3 educational institutions. Police stations in particular came under deliberate attack across the Strip. The Arafat City police headquarters in Gaza City, as well as 3 other stations, were attacked within the first few minutes of the assault on December 27th. The UN report states that over the course of Israel's military operations, 248 members of the Gaza police force were killed, which means that more than 1 out of every 6 fatalities was a police officer. Israel's defense minister at the time, Ehud Barak, claimed that there were 3 objectives for launching the offensive: dealing Hamas, which since winning the 2006 Palestinian elections had governed the Gaza Strip, a forceful blow, fundamentally changing the situation in Gaza and bringing the rocket attacks against Israeli citizens to a halt. Barak ordered a special situation on the home front for all Israeli communities within a 13-mile radius of the nominal border of the coastal enclave, which was quickly expanded to include the southern Israeli cities of Ashdod and Ashkelon. Israel also drafted around 6,700 army reservists in case it decided to widen the operation. Given that the assault was launched during an election season, all contenders halted their campaigns in a show of support for then Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, who had also launched a war on Lebanon just 2 years earlier. On the 8th day of the war, 3rd of January 2009, Israel launched a ground invasion of Gaza. Israeli infantry entered the enclave from the north, supported by artillery fire and fighter jets. The Palestinians in Gaza, it must be remembered, have no artillery or heavy weapons, no tanks, no air force, and no navy. They face the full might of one of the world's strongest and best equipped armed forces. The UN report details how Israel tried to cut the Strip in 2, bisecting the territory from Karni, al-Montar, crossing in the east through al-Nusriat, south of Gaza City, to the coast before focusing troops in the north. For a further 5 days, the northern towns of al-Atara and Beit Laaya came under heavy attack, with the UN report detailing Israel's alleged use of human shields. The alleged widespread mistreatment of civilians, including detentions and transfers of large numbers to Israeli prisons in unlawful circumstances. I'm going to skip the gory details because I'd like to get into the interview with tonight's guest, Ahmed Shameya. Ahmed is a 24-year-old Gaza-based journalist and human rights activist in Palestine. He has a bachelor's degree in the English language and is a teacher, translator, writer, and founder of Al-Kofia. That's alkofia.org, ALKOFIYA.org, an independent Palestinian foundation based in Gaza that aims to raise awareness about the Palestinian cause by sharing daily news from Palestine. Gaza has been opposed to Israeli aggression and occupation since 2008. That's 14 years now it's been going on. And Ahmed's writings, photographs, and videos reach out to the world, mostly through Patreon and Twitter, chronicling the suffering and pain that has gone on and continues to go on in Gaza and Palestine. Ahmed says, "We're extremely poor here in Gaza, and all of us hope to live in peace, no wars, to live a full life full of love, peace, and full of hope." Ahmed posts daily, if not hourly, on Twitter at Ahmed WSH 95. That's AHMED WSH 95. And also, I wanted to make a little disclaimer in an effort to avoid being labeled, as is very often the case with anyone who's critical of Israel, and I must say critical of Israel and the government, not of the Jewish people, but the extreme right-wing aspect of the government and also the Zionist movement that holds quite a bit of power in Israel. I also wish to mention I'm a member of JFP, which is Jewish Voice for Peace, an organization dedicated to peace in the Middle East. Please visit their website for more information. I'll just finish off by reading Ahmed's intro. He says on his Patreon site, he says, "I'm Ahmed Shameya. I'm 24 years old. I live in the besieged city of Gaza, and I work as a freelance journalist. I have a bachelor's degree in English. I've been working as a journalist for over 2 years, and I work to reach out about our suffering and pain here in Gaza and to reach out our voices here in Gaza and Palestine for the whole world to see. We're here in Gaza living in the besieged city, which has been imposed for 14 years by Israeli occupation. And the Palestinian, and this is just my own personal opinion, the Palestinian conflict with Israel, in my mind, is the same struggle indigenous peoples the world over endure, a struggle for recognition, identity, and for justice." This is an interview that I conducted earlier this week directly from Gaza, and some of the sound quality gets a little odd, but if you know anything about the circumstances there, as Ahmed told me in my first interview with him a couple of months ago, power is often restricted there, and day-to-day life can be rather difficult. So before I bring Ahmed into the show, I would like to play a song. I've played this occasionally on my show. This is a slightly different mix by one of my favorite politically oriented artists, the rapper Low-Key, with Islam Jawad and Hassan Salam. This is called Long Live Palestine, Parts 1 and 2.
Not every Zionist is Jewish, and not every Jew is a Zionist.
This is for Palestine, Ramallah, West Bank, Gaza. It's about time we globalize the intifada. Listen close, I've got 6 words for Obama. Long live Palestine, long live Gaza. Palestine, Ramallah, West Bank, Gaza. It's about time we globalize the intifada. Listen close, I've got 6 words for Obama. Long live Palestine, long live Gaza.
The government supports the people of the UK didn't. Zionism's not compatible with Judaism. The hijacked faith, the state is misrepresenting Israel equals displacement and ethnic cleansing. I know I'm on a list for being more verbal. Curse every Zionist since Theodore Herzl. Balfour was not a wise man. Shame on Rothschild. Between them the monster they created has gone wild.
العدو انحصر من اخون غدر. انتوا بتشعروش بالبطولة لو حفتكم بحجر الانسحاب من العراق مثل جراد فات جم خراب غاب فيش عقاب. كم من تم كتم كم من هدم. حريتي بتبدا لما اخذها يدفع الثمن. سيد القاضي انظر اليه افتح دينيه. كم من دليل يصرخ عليه اترك المطرق اعطيني حرياتي واربط ايديه.
Tears to laughter, our children don't fear disaster. Living near the master, clear the fastest, hear the casket. We rap when we die from bombastic talk. Looms after hot summer days in the thunder blaze. They murk your dreams like Theodore Herzl screams in the UN in 48. Third intifada for mothers' daughters, sons martyred and empty fathers like
عودة وبس. مجتمع كامل بالحبس. رصاص ضرب وضرب. المطر كبس وكبس. النفس لكن قطع حتى الطفل انرفس. 6 حدود ام حديد شيل الطير من القفص. روح طير طير يا عمي. روح انت دمي حياتي وقلبي. معك هيدا ذنبي. ناطر بس المهدي وعيسى ان يأتي. والامل الوحيد اللي صفى هو ربي.
با اینکه تو تلویزیون همش میشینن دروغ میگن داشتم اخبار میدیدم که چطورا جورا رو بچه ها و عشقای مادر ها رو زمین میریزن. بچه ها شیرینن نشونش رو بچه ای که تازه یاد گرفته را بره و دستشو میگیرن. باری کرد بعد تیری زد. چند وقت پیش صحنه های شبیه اینو تو چند قدمی میدیدم. دارم چی میگم.
Now, free, free Palestine, 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 free, free Palestine.
Israel is a terrorist state. Better
evidence is quite obvious. What criminals use illegal weapons like white phosphorus. Burns your flesh to the bone, and if you happen to live, you'll be left infected with cancer. You curse the fact that you did. Forgive me if I wish the same fate on those Israelis responsible for killing all those innocent little babies. I studied the Torah and learned by their own admission Israel's actions are not kosher in their own religion.
بطلع حوالي فيش حياة أخذوا أرضي من تحت جاي أعطوني معاناة كنا نحمل طرية نترزى من الله خلونا نحمل بندقية نتوكل على الله مجزرة مذبحة الكل شافها على الشاشات مش اليوم مش ضفة مش غزت معا بالصفحات التاريخ شوف المسيح شوف أكتر من 60 عام دق الأجساد في فلسطين.
The devil's got an unholy plan for the holy land, so I hold my Quran, culture power in the other hand. No oasis, just bloodstained sand. Settlements setting up to eliminate child, woman, and man. No such thing as the Middle East, brother, they deceiving you. No matter where you stand, there's always something to the east of you. So whether it's the Mossad or the FBI policing you, it's all one struggle until the final breath is leaving you.
لازم نعرف كيف نهدد الشعب العربي وحدتنا عمود الصقري. لازم نتعلم كيف نفكر، لازم نتعلم كيف نودي رسالة بدون ما نسكر أبواب الإيمان. يا سيدي ما كنتش عرفت خيري لو ما جربت غيري، فخد كلامي تجربي مش إلهاني. لازم نقطع راس الوحش عشان يضيع طريقه وآخرته تنكشف.
Now, free, free Palestine, 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 free, free Palestine.
So, without further ado, I will introduce my interview with Palestinian journalist Ahmed Shameya. Welcome, Ahmed. Thank you once again for joining us on the show. It's been a few months since we last have you, and it's great to have you back. I'd like to ask right away if you could tell me your feelings on having seen so much support for the Palestinian people during the World Cup. Also, please talk about young players such as Ahmed Atef, Darakma, and other players who've been killed or injured by the Israeli military over the past few months.
Yes, brother. I was so happy and proud on having seen all the world in the World Cup in Qatar support our cause, support Palestine during the World Cup. And many teams and football fans, you saw many pictures and videos. They are raising Palestinian flags. They are standing in solidarity with Palestine. And don't forget what happened in Qatar. They ignoring Israeli medias because the people around the world know well who is the Israeli occupation and refuse the killer and the occupiers. Palestine has big supporters around the world, and we saw it in the World Cup. Yes, about Ahmed Darakma, he is a player in I think in Nablus. Yeah, Israeli forces killed the Palestinian player Ahmed Darakma due to the Israeli incursion in Nablus city in the occupied Palestine, in the occupied West Bank. Everyone in Palestine are targeted. Everyone in Palestine, whether a woman, child, elderly, and whether a player, everyone are targeted and maybe died in any time by Israeli fighters, whether Israeli soldiers fires or Israeli settlers' fires. I remember two Palestinian players who was killed by the Israeli forces in 2009. Ayman al-Kurd, 28 years old, is a former national team player, Palestinian national team player, and Wajih Mushtaha is a Palestinian Olympic soccer player. Due to the Israeli aggression in Gaza in 2008 and 2009. These two Palestinian players was killed by Israeli forces chilling in Gaza. And many Palestinians was injured and other was amputated their limbs by Israeli forces in the Great March of Britain. You know the Great March of Britain?
No, oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, many Palestinians. If you search about Palestinians players on Google, YouTube, injured by Israeli occupation forces in Great March, you use so many pictures, so many videos about the Palestinians. They amputated their limbs by Israeli fires and their legs, and they will not play football or any game more because they amputated their limbs.
Yeah. We see your posts almost every day on Patreon and Twitter. It's very important and essential work that you're doing. So, and I know it's dangerous and difficult. So you must know that we are always thinking of you and appreciative of the excellent work that you continue to do.
Welcome, brother. Don't worry. This is my attitude, and I have to work. I have to do it because the world have to know more about Palestine, to know more about Israeli occupation.
I know that tomorrow, December the 27th, is the anniversary of the 2008-2009 Israeli military assault on the Palestinians in Gaza. You were probably quite young at the time, but I was wondering if you might share some of your recollections, as difficult as that may be for you.
Oh my God, it was so horrible. I was 13 years old. I remember that when the aggression started, I was in the school. Yeah, in the last class. And when the bombing was started by Israeli warplanes, all of us was afraid. We are young and we are child, 13 years old, and we are away from our homes. Maybe it's horrible. It's horrible. We was afraid and choked. What happened? We asked our teacher what happened. And we ran away to our home. And I ran to my mom, and I cried. I was a child, and I asked my mom, "What's up, my mom? What's up? What's happened?" She told me that Israeli warplanes started chilling Gaza. In the first hour, it was at 11:30 a.m. Yeah, maybe 11:27 a.m. I remember that all my family was slept in one room, all the days in one room. My father, my sisters, my brothers, my mothers, all of us, we was sleep in my room because we are afraid. And you know, I want to talk about the war. You know that in the first hour, moreover, 150 war planes start bombing Gaza. More than 100 war planes are started bombing Gaza. And in the first day, moreover, 250 citizens was killed due to the bombing in Gaza. In the first hour, it continued for 23 days from 27th of December to 18th of January. You know, more than 1,430 Palestinians were killed by Israel, and including 400 children and more than 2,200 women, and more than 5,000 citizens were injured, and more than 10,000 houses were demolished. You know?
So it was almost all women and children and innocent civilians that were killed and injured during this terrible time.
Children injured and women injured, children killed, women killed. I told you that 1,400 Palestinians were killed, including 400 children, more than 200 women, 5,000 were injured, more than 10,000 houses were demolished. You know what is, you live 23 days in afraid, and maybe in any time you will be bombed. In any time, maybe killed or injured. You don't know. It was so horrific. And no one in Gaza, Malcolm, no one in Gaza can forget these times, and no one in the world can imagine these horrific days we was lived in. 23 years, we will not forget it. We won't forget it.
Well, it's good that you're on this program to remind people of what happened, because unfortunately it's still going on, and a lot of people to this day still don't believe that what happened.
If you search about the Israeli aggression on Gaza in 2008, open the picture, you will choke.
Yeah.
You will choke. You will not be able to see the picture. You will not be able. I swear that you will close the pictures and close your phone.
Well, I have seen some images from those terrible days, and it is indeed very, very difficult to look at.
Look at the first hour. Look at the first hour. Open the video in the first hour of Israeli bombing in Gaza. Just in the first hour, you will see something. It's horrific and horrible.
Yes, I agree. It's almost impossible to understand if you don't see things like this with your own eyes. From my own personal point of view, it's beyond my own comprehension that this is something that the world can stand by and watch without feeling complete outrage.
You can't understand, and you will not understand the picture and the videos. It's horrible. It's horrific. You can't imagine that.
Yeah.
Maybe you can see this picture in horrific films and horrific movies, but in your life, you will not see it. You can't understand it.
There's a very good quote from a anti-war photographer by the name of James Nachtwey, and he says in reference to his photographs, he says, if we don't look, who will? And I think that's very important and appropriate for what the work that you're doing, getting images out for us to see so that we can know what's going on. I wanted to ask, what are some of the events planned to mark the anniversary, and do you think it will be peaceful, or do you anticipate any violence from Israel or anything along those lines?
After 14 years old of the Israeli aggression in Gaza, I don't think that will be. Maybe will be some activities in Gaza to celebrate the anniversary of the war in Gaza. Maybe, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that will be peaceful. And I think that there will be no violence, whether by Palestinians or by Israeli.
Mm-hmm.
Some activities maybe like demonstrations and activities like conversation, like that.
How has life changed since the new Israeli government came to power? They seem much more far-right and even more aggressive than before. This individual, Ben Gavir, especially, he's apparently now in charge of security. He seems to be a complete gangster, a very fanatical Zionist. Now he's very much part of the new government. They're completely racist and dedicated to basically the complete destruction of Palestine and the Palestinians, or so it seems.
They are very extremists, and they want to kill the large number of Palestinians. And don't forget the statement of the extremist Tamar Ben Gvir, Tamar, the upcoming Israeli National Security Minister.
And what did he say?
He said that the large number of Palestinians should be killed, and he calls directly for the killing and execution of Palestinians in Gaza, Jerusalem, and West Bank, especially in Jenin and Nablus. Some resistance in Jenin and Nablus. And I want to say that yesterday, Israeli occupation imposed a new siege on Nablus. They told the Palestinian government that all the entrance of Nablus will be closed. Yeah, and a new siege on Nablus. I saw the news. This news in our local news.
Well, I don't know how people of good conscience, Christian, Jew, Muslim, Buddhist, or otherwise, or atheist for that matter, can sit by and watch these things happen in any good conscience, especially because our American government seems to fully endorse these things. I wanted to ask you now about I've been seeing reports of Israeli Zionist assaults on mosques. We've been seeing that quite a bit lately. Could you talk about that, please?
Yeah, every day Israeli settlers storm Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. Every day, morning. A group of Israeli settlers are storming Al-Aqsa Mosque every day. And the Ibrahimi Mosque in Hebron and Joseph Tomb in Nablus. They always start to storming these mosques.
And what could be the reason for these, I don't know, I wouldn't call them demonstrations. I would call them basically an assault on your religion and your people. What do you think the motive behind this is?
They want to make some religion activities in Hebrew, but I think the main things they want to provoke the Palestinians, violate the sanctity of Al-Aqsa Mosque, and perform some They make provocative dances for Muslim and Palestinians. They think that Al-Aqsa Mosque for them, not for Muslims. They think that Al-Aqsa Mosque have to be demolished, and they want to build over it the temple. I don't know how they think about Al-Aqsa Mosque, but they always provoke Palestinians by dancing in Al-Aqsa Mosque. You know the sanctity of Al-Aqsa Mosque in Islam, and they make a dance in Al-Aqsa Mosque. It's a prevent to dance in a mosque in Islam. They make it to provoke Palestinians and to provoke Muslims. This is the aims of Israeli storming of Al-Aqsa Mosque.
I see. I thought before I jump back into the interview with Ahmed, I'm going to play this track by MC Abdul from the album Shouting at the Wall. This is a track called Shouting at the Wall.
I'm exhausted. Last night I couldn't sleep, but when I did, I could hear bombs in my dreams. Nightmare situation. How could they be so evil, making martyrs out of children and innocent people? We expect the bombs, not knowing where next. Huddle in the corner of my room, trying to protect my little brother as the building shakes like it's possessed. But nothing stronger than the will of the oppressed. I bomb back with my lyrics and rhymes, living the times trying to break the Palestinian minds. What's hiding in the clouds hanging over my head? My dad risks his life outside to buy bread. The fourth war in my 12th year. At this stage I'm numb, though I haven't feel scared. There's nothing I can do in this case to stay safe. I'm brave, even though this house could be in my grave. I want freedom for the population. 2 million prisoners living in this location, shouting at the wall, but nothing is ever changing. That's life under an occupation. I want freedom for the population. 2 million prisoners living in this location, shouting at the wall, but nothing is ever changing. That's life under an occupation. Mothers mourn, frightened with grief. White sheets cover bodies that lie on the streets. Buildings turn to ash, but my mind is made of steel. So it doesn't take much for me to heal. Won't lose the will to live or lose our minds. My auntie lost her home, so she lost her life, but she is still alive, but traumatized by the bombs that flew in and dropped that night. My sister couldn't sleep, tried to stop her cries. I said it was fireworks, I was telling her lies. Where's the compassion? This is heartless. It's like they want us all living in darkness, cutting off water and electricity for hours. They're knocking towers, but that's not knocking the power that I have in my pen. When I'm writing, I'm unstoppable. The microphone is the only escape possible, cause that's the way that I can speak my mind. I wonder how does the fighter pilot sleep at night, knowing he can turn the city upside down all of a sudden, slaughtering families with the push of a button. I want freedom for the population. 2 million prisoners living in this location, shouting at the wall, but nothing is ever changing. That's life under an occupation. I want freedom for the population. 2 million prisoners living in this location, shouting at the wall, but nothing is ever changing. That's life under an occupation.
And we're back with my special guest, Ahmed Shameya, joining us via the joys of modern technology from Gaza. in Palestine. And Ahmed, welcome to the show again. I want to talk now about the new Netflix film called Farhad, which depicts the plight of a young Palestinian woman, during the tragedy of 1947-48. Have you seen this film or heard of it? Israel has tried to ban the film, of course.
I don't see it, but I arrange myself to see it next week because I am so busy. But I saw the summarizes of this film. It's a historical drama film about Palestinian girls coming of age experience during the Nakba, the 1948 displacement of Palestinians from their homeland. And the story wrote based on a true story that she was told as a child about a girl named Radia. You know, it's the film. It's about a true story, a real story, and happened in 1948 in Nakba, and to be premiered at the Toronto Films Festivals on 14 September to 2021, and began airing on Netflix on 1 December 2022.
Well, for anybody who hasn't seen the film, it's basically a story of one family, and the Israeli military raids their village, and the father, in order to defend the village, because he's the mayor of the village, goes off to fight, but he locks his daughter in a kind of a storage area where she spends the majority of the film just kind of listening to what's going on around. So it's a very personal feeling experience, but it's very moving, and I can understand why Israel was so upset about this film coming out.
Yeah, so the Israeli ministers, some of the Israeli ministers are criticized Netflix on streaming the production. After 1 December releases, the film releases on Netflix, the streaming platform, and films were criticized by Israeli politicians like Israeli finance minister Avigdor Lieberman. Lieberman criticized Netflix for streaming the production. The reaction to the films was focused on a sense that depicts the killing of Palestinian family by the Israeli soldier. They tried to stop releasing the film Malcolm on streaming platforms, on Netflix, on another platforms, because they don't want the world to know their truth. The truth of Israeli occupation, the truth of killing, racism, apartheid, and terrorism. This is the truth of Israeli occupation. They don't want the world to know the truth. They want to close all eyes of the world about the truth of Israeli occupation.
Well, I think one thing that the film kind of shows, well, at least hints at, is that this wasn't just one of those, well, you know, these are the things that happen during wartime or conflict. This has been an ongoing process of genocide for 74 years, going on 75 years against the Palestinian people. And it's only seemingly getting even worse now with the more radical government in place in Israel.
They tried to ban the film because it's the first film about Nakba. It's a real story. They want to ban the film. They want to close your eyes, the world's eyes, about the truth of Israeli occupation.
Yeah.
How they occupied Palestine, how they killed Palestine, how they killed Palestine, and they don't want the world to know the truth. Yes.
Well, the West, with the tacit approval and backing of the United States and Britain mostly, have propagated a narrative for decades now that before the Israelis settlers showed up in 1946-47 after the Second World War, that there was nothing there. It was just kind of empty desert space with a few people running around on camels, living in tents and not doing much at all with the land, which is completely false. I watched a documentary recently about Palestine, and it was a very progressive society up until that time. In fact, they had a railway system, advanced forms of communication, great universities, an excellent trading operation out of the places like Jaffa with the Mediterranean. So it's kind of built upon this myth of what we would, as colonial countries, call progress.
The propagandists are trying to lying about Palestine. They told the world about that this is the land of Israelis, and it is not for Israelis, it's for Palestine.
Yeah.
One day Palestine will be free, inshallah.
Yes, inshallah, indeed. How do you feel seeing so much money and attention going towards, for example, Ukraine, while most of the world continues to ignore the plight of the Palestinian people?
I feeling about when we see the Western government and the USA are supporting Ukraine and money and weapons, and they close their eyes about what happened in Palestine. They also support Israelis in weapons and money. You know, USA government are supporting Israel by weapons like F-16, and they give them money about to pay the Iron Dome. You know the Iron Dome?
Yes.
It's American manufacturers, and it's. I think that all the world is hypocrisy and double standards. And the Irish member, you know, the Irish member Parliament. I think what is her name?
Yeah, Claire Daly.
Yeah, highlight the double standards of the world, and she said that everybody has the right to the highest international standards. You know, also Google identifying Ukraine as a resistant and Palestinian as a terrorist. Yeah, if you share about Palestine, you will see Palestine as a terrorism, and if you write about Ukraine, you will see a resistance.
Yes.
This is double standards.
Yeah, you're right. It does seem like there's this kind of double standard where Palestinians are called terrorists, yet Ukrainians are called innocent victims of aggression. So.
Yeah. Malcolm, if you listen and saw the Western media, like CNN, BBC, like they talk about Palestine that it is a terrorist, like when Israeli warplanes are chilling Gaza, the subtitle is the title is talk about Israel bombings, terrorism in Gaza, terrorists in Gaza. Not the government, but also the Western media is double standards.
Well, Ahmed, I wanted to ask you, since it's been a couple of months since we last spoke, roughly how many not just young Palestinians, but Palestinians have been killed or injured since we last spoke?
Since the last month, I can't remember how many Palestinians were killed by Israeli forces, but I think it's between 10 to 15 Palestinians were killed, between them, a girl and prisoner. I remember Ahmed Ragma, who was killed in Nablus, and the two brothers, Ahmed and Mohammed Mtair, who was killed by Israeli settlers after run over them in Nablus. Also, we don't forget the prisoner Nasser Abu Hamid. Nasser, he was in a hunger strike, and he was, I think he is have a cancer. Yeah.
Yes.
Who was died inside the Israeli jails due to the medical neglecting. And the Palestinian girl, Jana Zakarna,
yes,
was killed by the Israeli forces fires in Nablus while she was searching about its cats in the roof of her house in Nablus. And the Palestinian Rimawi, who lived inside Israel, was killed by Israeli forces. And another Palestinians were killed by Israeli forces. I don't remember them, but what I remember, I told you about Ahmed Ragma Muhammad and two brothers, Ahmed and Ahmed Mtair, and Nasser Abu Hamid and Jana Zakarna and Yarimawi. Maybe 10 to 15 Palestinians were killed last month. But I think in 2022, more than 200 Palestinians were killed by Israeli fires. In Gaza, West Bank, Jerusalem, more than 200 Palestinians were killed by Israeli forces.
Yeah, well, I did see a very disturbing video just last week, I think it was, that someone had posted of a young Palestinian man being purposely run over by an Israeli settler.
Yeah. The Israeli settlers run over Palestinians I think in Nablus or Jenin, I don't remember. And Ahmed and Mohammed Mtair last week was killed by Israeli settlers after run over them in Nablus. Yeah, another crime by Israeli settlers.
Well, I know this is a very difficult question, but I actually have a friend who's from Canada, and he's now a settler, Israeli settler, and I guess my question would be, if you could sit down together and have a conversation, what would you say to my friend?
I refuse to sit with him. My brother Marco, that we are a Palestinian will never sit with an Israeli, whether in peaceful or not. Because that the Israeli settlers, Israeli forces, all of Israeli killed our children, women and elderly. And they have been sieging Gaza since 16 years and bombing it. Michael, shall I ask you a question?
Yes, please do.
Okay, how you can sit with someone that he killed your brother or your cousin or your neighbor or even your countryman? How can?
Well, I don't honestly know that I would be able to do that either. I would find it extremely difficult, yes.
So I will never sit with him. I repeat that I won't sit with the Israeli or even anyone who support the Israeli killers. I don't sit with him. Yeah.
Well, my honest belief is that Palestine should be for the Palestinians, and as you say so often, from the river to the sea. That's, for me, the only solution. The discussions about a two-state solution are irrelevant. It's never going to happen. It's pointless. So
Palestine have to return to the Palestinians from the river to the sea.
I'm very grateful and honored to have had you back on the show, Ahmed. I'd like to ask if there's anything else that you'd like to say before we say goodbye.
Nothing. I have a message to all listeners who are hearing us now that please stand with Palestine and Palestinian people, and please don't stop talking. Don't stop talking about Palestine cause, and don't forget us from your prayers. Please let our message from for this Christmas be defend Palestine. Inshallah, Palestine will be free.
Yes, it's more important now than ever, especially now that we've got this much more radical right-wing government in Israel. So I do see some very dark days ahead for you.
I want to tell all the listeners I'm working on a new website, inshallah. It is alkofia.net. I'm working on it. It's about Palestine news. It will be published, inshallah, next week. It's alkofia.net. And be tuned, inshallah. It's about Palestine news, world news, and some article news, inshallah, about Palestine, about world. Be tuned. And Al-Kufiyya, org, and Al-Kufiyya in Twitter. You can see all our tweets on Al-Kufiyya and Ahmed Shameya. Yes, inshallah.
Well, I wish you all the best to you and also to your family in the coming year. So thank you so much for being on the show once again, and we'll try and get you back soon.
You are welcome.
Okay, well, stay safe, my friend.
You too, brother.
Yes, you too, my brother.
Thank you.
يا غيم اللي جاي وينو القمر قالت لا لحكاي أسرار مخباي مخباي أنوار القمر رجعت الحلواي وبقلبها لحكاي نامت عالتكاي عم تحلم بالقمر.
And that was an interview with Palestinian journalist Ahmed Shameya. And as he said, you can check out his new website, alkofia.net, alkofia.net. So we're going to take a quick break for some station ID, and we will be right back with some music inspired by the Palestinian people, their struggle for justice, and for my friend Ahmed. And the Kingston Library invites you to research your historic house Saturday. Yeah, see that? You know I'm Canadian because I said house. House. I had to get out of the house because there was a mouse. Historic Kingston House. Can't help it. It's the dead giveaway. Saturday, January 14th. Meet historical preservation professional Marissa Marvelli in the local history room of the Kingston Library to ask questions and learn how to research your historic home. You learn how to find out when your home was built, who lived in it, and other information using historic maps, deeds, census records, newspaper archives, and more. Research your historic house Saturday, January 14th between 1 and 3 p.m. at the local history room of the Kingston Library, 55 Franklin Street in Kingston, New York. And also, of course, there's always Lowell Thing's great book, West Chestnut Street, the street that built the city, written by my once former neighbor, Lowell Thing, who did a lot of his research actually at the Kingston Library, and until, of course, the internet came along and changed everything and made his research even, well, different. I'm going to play music for the rest of the show. I may do a little bit of commentary, but mostly we'll do music inspired by or for the Palestinians, inshallah. This is a track called Memories of a Palestinian Wound by Amal Murkas.
ليس حقيبة وطني ليس حقيبة وأنا لست مسافر وأنا لست مسافر فأنا العاشق فأنا العاشق والأرض حبيبة والأرض حبيبة وأنا لست مسافر وأنا لست مسافر فأنا العاشق فأنا العاشق والأرض حبيبة والأرض حبيبة وأنا فأنا العاشق فأنا العاشق والأرض حبيبة والأرض حبيبة والأرض حبيبة
There was a tank attack. There was a gas attack. Never a heart attack. Because the beat never goes on. The beat never goes. The streets never goes. Middle East never goes. The beat never goes on.
I'm a little Abu Antar, little Black Panther, على little Hamda, little Biggie, little Pac, عطوقا فتوى, Malcolm in the middle, East, Gaza.
Let the truth come, flow pure Zamzam. I have a clean Dr. King Abu Tanklan. Show your lyrics do bang bang. Spitting three lingos, my lyrics do gang bang.
A1,
mic check,
1-1,
name 2.
Fight the occupation coming straight from the curfew.
Smack you like snares do.
Sick flight,
Bird flu.
stay true.
True.
No, we don't talk blank, we don't talk blank. We bring tires and it's harder than your gold drain. You wanna talk blank, cause I can talk blank. Like Tina Fey, we carry 30 rocks more than ball blank.
There was a tank attack. There was a gas attack. Never a heart attack. Because the beat never goes on. The beat never goes. The streets never goes. Middle East never goes. The beat never goes on.
Maybe I'm an African, let me rephrase it. I wasn't taken to a land, but my land was taken. Maybe native, let me erase it. Unsacred to then snake it, asking where the rain is.
Maybe I am nameless, faceless, even better, raceless. Maybe fish red. Ain't nothing but a street thing, baby. Are you down with it?
And for Palestinians, we're pronouncing it. Are you down with it?
From the tunnels of Gaza, what's more on the ground than this?
أقمتم فؤادي في الهواء وقعدت وسألت جبني القريب ونمت
never goes off. The beat never goes. The streets never goes. Middle East never goes. The beat never goes off. The beat never goes. The streets never goes. Middle East never goes. The beat never goes off.
That was The Beat Never Goes Off featuring MC Abdul with Tamar Nafar and Noel Karman from the album The Beat Never Goes Off. Just continuing on my little backstory on the situation in Gaza since 2008, and as I said at the beginning of the program, December 27th was the, anniversary is an odd word, but the commemoration, if you will, of the 2008 war beginning in Gaza. And Gaza has never, basically, it was a siege. Israel tried to divide things. And, anyway, Gaza has never recovered from the 2008 war. And while acknowledging that its economy was already being strangled by the siege, the UN report found that Israel's military operation destroyed a substantial part of the Gaza Strip's economy, its infrastructure, and its capacity to support decent, livelihoods for families. The figures speak for themselves. About 700 businesses were damaged, were destroyed, direct losses totaling roughly $140 million US dollars. The agricultural sector suffered losses of about $170 million, and over 3,354 houses were completely destroyed, with a further 11,000 damaged, according to figures from the United Nations Development Program. A separate UN report estimated the cost of Gaza's losses and damage at about $1.1 billion. In the years since, Israel's siege of the Strip has prevented the reconstruction of infrastructure destroyed during its 2008 offensive. To add insult to injury, Gaza has also since been the target of two more wars at the hands of Israel. The 2012 war, dubbed Operation Pillar of Defense, and the 2014 war, dubbed Operation Protective Edge. I love how they come up with these names. I wonder who, they have like a meeting, sit around drinking coffee, coming up with funny, cute names for their military operations. Anyway, almost 4,000 Palestinians were killed during these three offensives. Today, 54% of Gaza's almost 2 million strong population is unemployed, while 53% live under the poverty line in what has been best described as one of the worst humanitarian situations in the world. A decade later, Israel continues to shirk responsibility for its actions. Earlier this month, an Israeli court ruled against Izzeldin Abouleish, a Palestinian doctor who lost 3 of his daughters during an Israeli air raid on his home in Jabalia in the north of the Strip. Abouleish's story was made famous after he discovered that his children, 13-year-old Besan, 15-year-old Mayer, and 20-year-old Aya, had been killed while he was speaking to an Israeli TV channel. Irony of all ironies. His suffering was broadcast live across the country and later shared widely around the world. Despite Abouleish's grief and the international attention his story received, the court still ruled that Israel bore no responsibility for the girls' deaths, instead calling it an unfortunate side effect of war. I think they also call that, during the Vietnam era, collateral damage. Anyway, on that pleasant, cheery note, I think I'll play some more music. I'm going to play this track. I've played this early on the last interview I did with Ahmed. This is a track called Carry the Earth from the album The Long March, and this is Le Trio Joubran, Le Trio Joubran, and with a guest appearance by Roger Waters.
Father's boys, father's boys, your boys, but also in the end, our boys too. Our boys. All our boys.
was Carry the Earth, performed by Le Trio Joubran with Roger Waters on vocals, from the album The Long March. During the interview with my guest, Ahmed Shameya, we discussed the film Farhad, which came out, well, it was released on Netflix, I should say. It's been out for about a year and a half. I think it was in the Cannes Film Festival and won an award or something like that. But it finally made its way to the American market via Netflix on December 1st, and immediately there was outrage from the Israeli government, or some people within the government, I should say, who didn't really take kindly to the idea of seeing Israel portrayed in such a fashion. That time, 1947-48, was the time of what is known as the Nabka. That is when the great disaster occurred for the Palestinians, when Israel basically began a form of genocide, forcing the Palestinians off of their land and rounding up villages. And unfortunately, in the film, it does portray a small massacre, which apparently is based on truth, because, well, for one thing, it's one circumstance. It doesn't implicate in any way Israel in mass murder or anything like that, but it does portray an incident where a family is rounded up and put against the wall and shot by some rather gung-ho Israeli military forces, while the main character, Farhad, the young teenage girl who, before this tragic situation occurred, had an aspiration to become a teacher and to go to school, to go to university, and her father, who's the mayor of the small village, reluctantly finally decides, after speaking to the imam, who also objects to a woman being educated, to let his daughter go to the university. But unfortunately, the events took place, and the father, in an effort to protect his daughter, locks her into a kind of a storage shed And the rest of the film, basically, he goes off to fight, and he's never heard from again, apparently. And it's a true story, by the way. He was never heard from again, so one can only assume that he died in the fighting. But the daughter, Fahad, is left in this very small storage space with, vegetables and lentils and rice and things. And all of the rest of the film takes place through her eyes, looking through this tiny crack in the door, at these terrible events occurring. And some of it's audio, oratory, some of it's visual, and sometimes it's a combination of both. And eventually she does get out. And anyway, it's a great film. So if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. Fahad on Netflix. I'm going to play a bit more music, and then we'll take maybe another commercial break after that. So let's see. This is a track called Gaza Strip, music of Palestine. Welcome back. My name's Malcolm Byrne, and you are listening to The Long Way Round here on Radio Kingston. Got about, 34 minutes, 25 minutes left in the show. So I thought perhaps we'll just go on a bit more of a musical journey for the rest of the program. I would urge you, if you hadn't been paying attention or hadn't listened, to make sure that you go to alkofia.net, which is Ahmed's new website. So that's alkoofiya.net. That's alkoofiya.net. And there you'll find updated information that Ahmed is doing. His very important journalistic work from Gaza, because as many of you who follow this show are probably aware, there's not a lot of there's not a lot of independent journalism left anymore. So it's up to people like Ahmed to basically get out his iPhone or whatever he's got and find himself an internet cafe and upload pictures every day with a little bit of a title and tell you what's really going on, not what they I don't like it when I say that, but what I mean is what our government and our media would like you to think or believe. I don't want to get bogged down in too much discussion about the nature of propaganda, but trust me, there's a lot of it going on, and we're all victims of it, myself included. So it's good to have someone like Ahmed out there making sure that we see. And as the great anti-war photographer James Nachtwey said earlier in the show, when people say, I don't like to look at those photographs of these terrible things, Nachtwey's response, because he spent 30, 35, 40 years of his life traveling around the world photographing conflicts, and in response to someone once saying something about one of his series of photographs, he said, well, if we don't look, who will? And I think that's very important. We must look, we must know, we must keep fighting, because it's up to us. It's not up to our government. It's not up to other people to do the work for us. That's something I agree very much with someone like Ralph Nader when he says that sort of thing. It's not up to, no one else is going to do it. We can't, and donating money is nice and it makes you feel good, but there's a million different ways you can do something, and it doesn't necessarily have to involve even giving money away, or even a little bit of civil disobedience will go a long way, even if that means retweeting something on the internet. So do your bit. Here's another track from an album called Music of Palestine. This is a track called Sarif et Toul.
أهواك ثوبا معطر أعيشك في المحل تينا وزيتان بسعرك ثوبا معطر وأبني خرائب عينيك بيتا وأبني خرائب عينيك بيتا وأهواك حيا وأهواك ميتا وأهواك حيا وأهواك ميتا وإن جعت أقتات زعتر وأمسح وجهي بشعرك الملتاع وأمسح وجهي بشعرك الملتاع يحمر وجهي المغبر وأولد في راحتيك جنينا وأنمو وأكبر وحين يهشم رأس الجنود وأشرب برد السجود لأنساك أهواك أكثر أعيشك في المحل طينا وزيتا وألبس عريك ثوبا وعطر أعيشك في المحل طينا وزيتا وألبس عريك ثوبا وعطر وأبني خرائب عينيك بيتا وأبني خرائب عينيك بيتا وأهواك حيا وأهواك ميتا وأهواك حيا وأهواك ميتا وإن جعت أقتات زعتر
وين ما اروح بشوف حدود سجن الانساني لاطفال العالم حرة وانا مالي حرية.
فوق 50 سنة احنا عايشين ورا سجون البنود اللي سجنين لنا ما يتغير مش حاسين ورا نور الا سياج منها احنا شايفين سما لونها ازرق غيمها ابيض بالنص نجمة ذكرى كنت بغير انا صامت عايش متفائل ما تعزل مني الامل بيجي دار فاصل السور يدور انا مربوط فلسطين كجنين لحبل الطابور بالارض جذور شجر زيتون ضل تولد وتجدد وتجدد غصون ممدود للسلام معروض لاحتلال ما يريد استسلام ليه انا اللي ما إله حرية لاني انا رافض اني اعيش بعبودية
وين ما اروح بشوف حدود سجن الانساني لاطفال العالم حرة وانا مالي حرية. وين ما اروح بشوف حدود سجن الانساني لاطفال العالم حرة وانا مالي حرية.
احنا بندور على السلام بين قوات حرب رواد حرب معهم صرنا اولاد حرب نطلب الحرية من السجون المعنية انه نكون معيون اللي دايما معمية من التفرج اطفال العالم الحرة دايما ضل بتدحرج للحياة المرة قواتنا شاطرين بس بتبهرج الكلام كلهم ماخدين تخرج بتعرج الاوطان واحنا نستعمل قوة عشان الضعف بنتحمل الموت عشان الحياة تعملنا بلطف ومش بعسف للحياة انولدنا ولما لقيناها مش بايدينا جربنا ناخدها فمتنا وكل اللي طلبناه كان نفس واللي ضحينا عشانه برضه كان نفس انت قولي ليش اطفال العالم حرة وانا مالي انا مالي حرية.
وين ما اروح بشوف حدود سجن الانساني لاطفال العالم حرة وانا مالي حرية. وين ما اروح بشوف حدود سجن الانساني لاطفال العالم حرة وانا مالي حرية.
انا بدي اعيش عالكبد وانا بدي اموت عاجرا وانا لساتني شايف الاحتلال مادد ايده مش للسلام مش مساواة بل تيهديني حبل مشنقة كمان مش زرع وجدار اللي فاصل بيني وبين اللي ما مخليني اشوف ضوء السماء الواحد و50 ولاية تربي كمان ولاية اللي تربى على حساب غيرها متأثرة من امها الهنود الحمر متأملة تمحينا تغسل دماغنا تقولنا انه المشكلة هي احنا
حتى الشوش العالم كلها ما بيقدر على الحرية. وين ما اروح بشوف حدود سجن الانساني لاطفال العالم حرة وانا مالي حرية. وين ما اروح بشوف حدود سجن الانساني لاطفال العالم حرة وانا مالي حرية.
وين ما اروح بشوف حدود سجن الانساني جيلا رائدا عملاق.
الخضراء عند المية والخضرة، خدني على الأرض الخضراء عند المية والخضرة، عند النبعة والتينة والدوالي الحزينة، عند النبعة والتينة والدوالي الحزينة، والأرض تنده وتقول خدني ع فلسطين، خدني خدني ع فلسطين، خدني بتنادي المعمورة ارجعوا عالحكورة، عم بتنادي المعمورة ارجعوا عالحكورة، حكورتنا بتنادي خدني ع فلسطين، خدني خدني ع فلسطين، خدني خدني ع فلسطين، خدني يا طير لا تواخدني، خدني ع فلسطين، خدني يا طير لا تواخدني، رجعني على بلادي عين أهلي وولادي، رجعني على بلادي عين أهلي وولادي، خدني ع فلسطين، خدني خدني ع فلسطين، خدني بلادي يا أم النضال يلي أنجبتي أبطال، بلادي يا أم النضال يلي أنجبتي أبطال، خدني على الأرض المحتل على السهل وعلى التل، خدني على الأرض المحتل على السهل وعلى التل، والأرض تنده وتقول خدني ع فلسطين، خدني ع فلسطين، خدني يا طير لا تواخدني، خدني ع فلسطين، خدني يا طير لا تواخدني، رجعني على بلادي عينة أهلي وولادي، رجعني على بلادي عينة أهلي وولادي، خدني ع فلسطين، خدني خدني ع فلسطين، خدني حيفا عم بتنادينا بتستنظركم المينا، حيفا عم بتنادينا بتستنظركم المينا، يا أخي طال الانتظار عودوا عودوا يا ثوار، يا أخي طال الانتظار عودوا عودوا يا ثوار، والأرض تنده وتقول خدني ع فلسطين. خدني يا طير لا تواخدني، خدني ع فلسطين، خدني يا طير لا تواخدني، رجعني على بلادي عين أهلي وولادي، رجعني على بلادي عين أهلي وولادي، خدني ع فلسطين، خدني خدني ع فلسطين، خدني خدني.
the end of the show. Thanks again for staying tuned. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please stay tuned to Radio Kingston for Freedom Highway with your host Nick Pankin coming up right after this. And just a couple of websites if you're interested in checking them out. Code Pink is a great one. Antiwar.com, another excellent resource. Jewish Voice for Peace, another great perspective on things in Israel with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And of course, DM25. Those are all great places. And of course, alkufia.net. That's ALKOOFIYA.net. That's Ahmed Shameya's new website. Take care. Goodbye. God bless.